in and out this fellowship for so many years, right? Getting a watered down message. Boy, and I kept on drinking. I kept on drinking. Man, it was wild, man. But just being in the fellowship wasn't good enough. I needed the AA program of recovery. And that brings me to this point on the preface. If you want to open your book to the preface on page XI, it's going to tell us where the AA program of recovery is. One thing about this, all these years, since the beginning of time, alcoholism hasn't changed. It's still the same. We suffer from an allergy of the body. We got a mental problem. See, the problem with the alcoholic is centers in his mind rather than his body. But however, the fellowship has changed. The first 100 men and women that helped put this book together, they're all dead now. So we got many new members. Some are alcoholic, but the unfortunate part is we got a lot of moderate drinkers. They might be got a jaywalking ticket by drinking. They think they have to come to AA. We got some heavy drinkers, right? They don't suffer from this allergy. But I need to come to AA to save my marriage or to get me another job or to keep my job from firing me. But Alcoholics Anonymous is for the real alcoholic. I'm the one of that type. I'm the damn real alcoholic. But anyway, on the preface, Brother Dan, if you would read from Because This Book.
Yeah, of course.
And then you can start right there where it says the 4th editions. A little short reading.
Yeah. Middle of the preface, everybody, XI. Because this book has become the basic text for our society and has helped such large numbers of alcoholic men and women to recovery, there exists strong sentiment against any radical changes being made in it. Therefore, the first portion of this volume describing the AA recovery program has been left untouched in the course of revisions made for the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th editions.
Okay, thank you, brother. See, this is important information. The first portion of this book, not the 12 and 12, not the Living Sober book, all these other, we got a lot of AA literature, right? But the program as described is in this book because it tells us the first portion of this volume describing the AA program. This is the only thing we need to get us sober and to keep us sober and teach us how to help other alcoholics. Now, the 12-step program is described in this book. It's a set of guiding principles outlining a course of action in order to help us recover from alcoholism. The goal is that we recover from this illness. We don't continue to suffer from this illness, and the book explains that as well, because the very first hope in this book says the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. I have so many people want to argue with me. I'm recovering the rest of my life. Well, Clown, if you got the flu, you going to suffer from the flu the rest of your life? No, you get well. We well, right? We recovered, but we're not cured of alcoholism. See, they missed that part of the book. Something that somebody may didn't read. But you can believe me, I study every sentence in this book. I was taken through this book line by line, and it was explained to me thoroughly. But I had to get honest with myself and accept this program because the fellowship didn't work for an alcoholic like me. Just going to meetings never solved my darn problem. Shoot, no, I leave out that meeting, I'm going to get drunk again. So, and the success of the AA program, it was started in the beginning. One recovered alcoholic talking to another alcoholic. And that set things off. When Bill Wilson finally met Dr. Bob, that set off the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's when it started. And it's been booming ever since, no doubt about it. And the point is, we carry this message. We don't carry some other message, right? The message I was being carried to, man, for years, it was, Kim, just don't drink today. You'll be okay. Meeting makers make it, Kim. Okay, well, I'm going to meetings 2 or 3 a day, and I'm still drinking. Well, so why I ain't making it? Because the program wasn't explained to me as it should have been. These people, they might pick the book up and read something, but they didn't explain nothing. just being in the fellowship. It took another recovered alcoholic to take me through this process in the book. And I since recovered from alcoholism. And what a blessing that is. And that's my hope and goal for everybody. You know, we recover from this thing. I no longer suffer from alcoholism. I suffer from myself, right? But self has been removed. But self want to pop up sometime. But I have to constantly remind myself, I'm no longer running the show. God is the director. I'm just his agent. He stays on my mind 24/7, so he can make my decisions today, right? So, a little bit about chapter 1. Bill's story. Just a little bit about old brother Bill, right? Bill and Dr. Bob, they was co-founders of AA, and Bill's first success came during a business trip to Akron, Ohio, when he was introduced to Dr. Bob. Dr. Bob was a surgeon. He couldn't stay sober, just like Bill couldn't stay sober. So after 30 days of working with him, Dr. Bob drank his last drink on June 10th, 1935, and founded the Alcoholics Anonymous. What a blessing that is. And still driving on strong, 88 years later. Yeah, 88 years, right? 35 to 20, 88 years later, it's still a boom and carrying this message. So Bill became sober, right, when a friend, Ebby Thatcher, came to talk to him when he was at his lowest point. So Ebby had the authority of the person who had suffered. Ebby suffered from the same thing Bill did, because he had no control over the amount that he drank and the outcome that it would have on him. They was about to lock him up and put him away. But some members from the Oxford group came and got Ebby, and they took him. And 2 months later, Ebby brought some conceptions from that group and brought them along to share with Bill. So Ebby came out larger and livelier than life. When Bill seen him, he just said, he looked at them eyes. He could see something different that happened to Ebby. It was something, he said, as a matter of fact, Bill said there was something that worked in a human heart, which had done the impossible. Here sat a miracle directly across from the table. He shouted great tidings early in his own recovery. Bill writes this, Brother Dan, on page 14. If you will, you'll please read on page 14 where Bill says, while I lay in the hospital, on down to where it says trials and low spots ahead.
Yeah, cool. It's the second to last paragraph on page 14. While I lay in the hospital, the thought came that there were thousands of hopeless alcoholics who might be glad to have what had been so freely given to me. Perhaps I could help some of them. They, in turn, might work with others. Where to, sorry?
Keep going.
Yeah,
cool.
You can keep going. My friend had emphasized the absolute necessity of demonstrating these principles in all my affairs. Particularly was it imperative to work with others as he had worked with me. Faith without works was dead, he said. And how appallingly true for the alcoholic. For if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, he could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead.
Okay, Brother Dan, you good right there. Thank you so much, as always.
Thank you.
Bill. Here Bill Wilson is laying in the hospital bed, right? And his mind is he fixed his thoughts on the need to help others. That's step 12. Bill want to share what he had done found. So it's quite natural. It's a natural instinct that he wanted to be a help to other people. Because he says, while I lay in the hospital, the thought came that there were thousands of hopeless alcoholics who might be glad to have what been so freely given me. Perhaps I could help some of them. They in turn might work with others. The chapter in working with others, it starts on page 89. And Bill mentions the word hopeless alcoholics. Bill was in a hopeless state. Bob was in a hopeless state. A lot of people we talk about in this book, some of them we're going to talk about today, I was hopeless, like just like these characters was. I couldn't stop myself from drinking. And then when I took a drink, I couldn't control the amount that I took. I was utterly hopeless. My own thoughts didn't solve my problem because it always failed. No matter how much I wished to try to wish my alcohol away, no matter how hard I tried not to take a drink, the mind was stronger, and I succumbed to that desire every time. So here, what Bill is doing on top of page 15. Let me back up one more, back to bottom of 14. It says, my friend had emphasized the absolute necessity of demonstrating these principles in all my affairs. So that's what we're talking about today. Spiritual principles and the program. Yes, this book is loaded with spiritual principles. Of course, the idea of these principles came from a much greater book that I love to stay in much as I can. The big book, and in my other big book, principles, guidelines on how we can live a better life. So anyway, the idea at this point, when we talk about spiritual principles, it's a spiritual pursuit. We're going to be willing to stay connected. And as we'll talk about later, we're going to find out what we can connect to and where we're going to find it. So it's a spiritual program. Well, it's not a religious program, though. It started basically from a Christian program. I'll get to that in just a minute. But then it also mentions the word faith without works is dead here on the top of page 15. But how we expand on this idea here at the top of page 15, we expand on this idea in pages 84 and 85. If you want to jot that down, you can. I'll get a chance to talk about that either before this meeting or probably be the second part of this meeting, because I probably won't be able to get as far as I want to today. But anyway, so then here's Bill. He talks about here on page 15. It said, indeed, during times Bill was nearly driven back to drinking. But the solution for him was, he found that soon when all other measures failed, work with another alcoholic would save the day. It is a design for living that works in rough going. And I love this right there, because in the middle of the second paragraph on the page, Bill says, I was not too well at the time, and I was plagued by waves of self-pity and resentment. And this sometimes nearly drove him to drink, but he always had that idea, work with another alcoholic, and it saved his day. And I love the fact that it is a design for living that works in rough going. So this is a recipe for living, helping others. That's the foundation stone of our recovery. It's also found on page 28 and page 81 when it talks about design for living, and it does work. So we talk about, we got a problem. Us alcoholics, we simply powerless. I was powerless and I was hopeless during my long illustrated drinking career, which lasted over 40 years. And then when I was introduced to the program, finally, not just the fellowship, I found I had been a real alcoholic for probably 40 of them 42 years that I drank. Shoot. No wonder I was so screwed up all them years. I was self-centered, I was selfish, all these things. So the first step in this journey is admission of powerlessness. Step one, right? We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Whoa. So we admit that powerlessness. So I used to go in these rooms and say, well, I'm an alcoholic. But an alcoholic like me, I couldn't admit I was powerless. I'd say the words, right? But I said, I ain't gonna believe that. I said, I can control my drinking whenever I got ready. Shoot, the lie detector determined that was a lie, because I could control it. No, if they even put a muzzle on my mouth, I was gonna bust that muzzle open and take that drink anyway. So I didn't have no control. I was totally out of control. My mind was out of whack, because we alcoholics suffer from the malady of the mind. Bill calls it an obsession. Dr. Silkworth called the same thing an obsession. But we know this to be the malady of the mind. Once again, the problem of the alcoholic is centers in his mind rather than in his body. But then once we put it in their body, if we're a real alcoholic and we got this allergy that develops this phenomenon of craving, we lose control. We're totally out of control. So we had to see where we failed in everything that we tried when it came to alcohol. As Bill Wilson mentions, he had to admit complete defeat. So I had to follow his example. See, we can follow these examples in his book, and it'll take us to being a recovered alcoholic. We got to do it precisely, exactly, to the point. No veering off to this side and this side, because nowhere in the big book have I seen that it asked us, well, Ken, what's your opinion? Charlie, what's your opinion? No, the facts are already here. So we don't need to add our opinions in this stuff. See, that's what I be seeing in my recovered alcoholic group. So many people come up with their own opinions, and I just respond to them with what the book says. Shoot, I learned from the book. Somebody 12-stepped me through this thing from the book. That's the bottom line. That's what the program of recovery found it. It ain't found out there in the fellowship. Meetings are okay if you go to the right type of meetings. But, you know, when you go to meetings and they ain't talking about the solution, then there's a problem. This Keystone group, we offer the solution. We ain't going to sit here and babble about no problems all day. We want to simply offer people the solution. Well, what helped us, we in turn passed this message on to other people. So we experienced this powerlessness in all the days we were drinking. So, and we alcoholic, well, we'll forever be powerless. But then the great fact is this: when we connect to this power greater than ourselves, which is simply solve your problem, we have a chance. We have a daily reprieve, contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. So, you know, I used to hear in the rooms, what does this word denial, right? Yeah, we can always put things off. We in denial because of our self-centeredness and selfishness. Yeah, I could say them words, right? My name Kimball, I'm an alcoholic. But I never could admit this powerlessness. I couldn't see it. You know, the big book tells us we have to distinguish between the true and the false, right? So the big book showed me these points and highlights. Oh, without help, it is too much for me, and it was. Hell, I'd like to kill myself many times dealing with alcoholism because I couldn't control the amount. So, and we can't, they don't tell us what we look for unless we study the book. That's the only way I could find out what my problem was. That's the only way I could find out what the solution was. So powerlessness over alcohol is the problem. I used to hear a lot of people in these rooms saying, I'm powerless over people, places, and things. How can that be? No. Alcoholism, I was powerless over. It had power over me, in other words. I ain't had the power, the necessary power to stop myself from taking a drink. But then again, there's hope. Here on page 25 in the big book, Brother Dan. It says where there is a solution. Page 25, Peach.
Yeah, sure. The first full paragraph, top of page 25. There is a solution. Almost none of us liked the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, the confession of shortcomings, which the process requires for its successful consummation. But we saw that it really worked in others, and we had to come to believe in the work. It worked in others, beg your pardon, in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living it. When, therefore, we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, there was nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. We have found much of heaven, and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence of which we have had not even dreamed.
Okay, stop right there for just a moment, Brother Dan. None of us like the self-searching. That's the inventory, right? It sounds like the step 4 inventory, right? We like to search ourselves. In my drinking career, I always thought I was right. I couldn't see the wrong I was doing. But this inventory, when we get to that part later or next week, uh, we can write down things and it can show us what's really going on. It also says we didn't like the leavening of our pride, the confessions of shortcomings, which the process requires for a successful consummation. But we saw that it really worked in others. We had come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living. That's a bad place to be in. Hopelessness and futility of life. I caught myself in this so many years. There are times I didn't want to live. I wanted to die several times, for real. I've been checked into a psych ward for suicidal and homicidal ideations due to my alcoholism. I didn't think like that when I'm sober. Only thing I could think about when I was sober for a day was another drink. But then the amounts I took put all these thoughts in my mind because I couldn't fix myself. Could not fix it. But then again, here back on page 25, it says, the great fact is this, and nothing less, that we have had deep and effectual spiritual experiences which have revolutionized our whole attitude toward life, toward our fellows, and toward God's universe. The central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. He has commenced to accomplish those things for us which we could not do for ourselves. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And you know, we'll back up here to page XXVI. Let's see, XXVII. Yeah, the middle of the page, XXVII. And here is when we talk about this hopelessness that we have. So in the middle of the page, Brother Dan, where it says frothy emotional appeal.
Sorry, Campbell. XXVII.
Yeah, XXVIII. I think
Oh, triple I.
I left out an I.
Yeah, I was going to say, so we believe. Right, yeah, that's it. Sorry. Frothy emotion appeal seldom suffices. The message which can interest and hold these alcoholic people must have depth and weight. In nearly all cases, their ideals must be grounded in a power greater than themselves if they are to recreate their lives.
Okay, no doubt about it. Frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. It don't. No matter how hard our families try to talk about our drinking, try to help us with our drinking, it don't work. No matter what the doctor tells us, it didn't work. So it talks about the message which can interest and hold these alcoholic people. It must have depth and weight. But here's an important part I want to bring out. In nearly all cases, their ideals must be grounded in a power greater than themselves if they are to recreate their lives. At this point, you know, when we real alcoholics, we're at a point we become beyond human aid. Only thing gonna solve our problem is getting making contact, a connection with a power greater than ourselves. The idea is most chronic alcoholics are doomed. I am that chronic alcoholic. I was doomed to an alcoholic death. Otherwise, I can choose to live life on a spiritual basis. And that's what this program does for us. It outlines the spiritual principles and it commences to help us recover from alcoholism. So here on page 22, now I'm gonna share this first, then I go over there. Back on 25, I think is where I'm at. Okay, yeah, bottom of page 25, it reads, if you are seriously alcoholic as we were, we believe there is no middle of the road solution. We were in a position where life was becoming impossible. And if we had passed into the region from which there is no return through human aid, we had but two alternatives. One was to go on to the bitter end. blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could, and the other, accept spiritual help. Thus, we did because we honestly want to, and we're willing to make the effort. Here's that human aid word again. Yes, alcoholic of our type, the real alcoholic, we simply beyond human aid. We don't have no power to stop ourselves from drinking. And that's the purpose of the spiritual principles of the 12 steps in the AA program of recovery. The solution is simple. It is spiritual. This is a spiritual solution. Thank God that this program was founded for us when it was. Now, Bill Wilson, one thing about Bill, he certainly wasn't the first alcoholic to suffer from alcoholism, but you know, he's definitely the first alcoholic to write down the experience he had battling alcoholism, the course of action he took, and the results afterwards. He even put in the book, our stories disclosed in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. So it's kind of a shift from like night and day, where we was in the darkness, doomed to an alcoholic death for so many years, and the spiritual awakening, something that's deep inside of us already, but we didn't know where or when to find this power greater than ourselves that the book was talking about at this point. So the big book says that, you know, only a power greater than human aid can restore us to sanity. Recovery follows from having a vital spiritual experience or experiences that revolutionizes our attitudes and outlooks upon life. And in the appendix, in the spiritual experience, the big book tells us what these experiences are. And if you will, go with me to page 5, 6, to 7 in the appendix, and I'll hit a few points and highlights right there. So, okay, appendix 2, where it talks about, it says spiritual experience. It says the term spiritual experience and spiritual awakening are used many times in this book, which upon careful reading shows the personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism has manifested itself among us in many different forms. Notice the word spiritual experience, spiritual awakening. This personality change, that's an awakening too. By taking these 12 steps, going by these principles, it'll produce this change. It works. It really does. But see, the first printing, it talks about the first printing. It gave many readers the impression that we have to have the same experience Bill Wilson and maybe many of the first ones had. You know, Bill had what we call this great white light experience. We don't have to have that experience. We can have an educational variety. I mean, we can have a sudden change in action or thoughts, not necessarily meaning today we're going to see this great light flash up on us and you say, oh, I didn't have a spiritual experience. Sometimes we don't recognize it until somebody else see it in us, right? We just know all of a sudden our attitudes be unchanged. Our whole life, the way we look at life today done changed. We have had a major shift. That's how we finally, and then this paragraph also talks about religious experiences. People back in the first, when this book was first published, they thought that it had to be sudden and spectacular upheavals. But thank God that isn't true. Even though in the first part of the book, early in the program, it had a number of sudden revolutionary changes, you know, they described. But they didn't want to create such an impression. So many alcoholics had concluded that in order to recover, they must acquire an immediate and overwhelming God consciousness, right? Followed at once by a vast change in feeling and outlook. See, the big book tells us that to some extent, we become God conscious. We become God conscious. We got something greater in us. Because, you know, no human being could relieve us of our alcoholism, no matter who you tried, how hard you tried. You can go to preacher, the minister, you can go to your wife, you go to whoever in the world. You can go to 1,000 meetings a week, or how many hours it is in a week, bro, Dan. You can go to meetings 24 hours, 7 days a week. It simply ain't gonna solve your problem without a connection, right? But the big book gonna tell us here on page 43 that once more, the alcoholic has no defense against that first drink. His defense must come from a power greater than himself. Whoa, yes. When I learned this stuff in this book, let's see what direction I needed to take. Oh, I was relieved when my sponsor started taking me through this book. I'd already been praying to God that I wanted to change, right? So he sent me a sponsor. I ain't have to go out looking for him like to tell you in the meetings. Go look for you a sponsor. See if you can identify with their story. The identification is found in this book. We can identify with Bill and the stories of these other people in this book. My sponsor used to tell me, these are our first sponsors, right? We learn the information from this book. Step 1, 2, and 3 is basic information. We learn the grade nature of our powerlessness. We learn the grade nature of alcoholism. And then we learn the solution. We learn the course of action. And it commences to solve all our problems. So then we can have an educational variety of a spiritual experience. It talks about that. We learn from this big book. So this is a textbook. We study this thing. Yes, we ain't got no teacher to grade us, right, like we did in school. But if we want to make A's, straight A's in school, we studied this book. We studied it hard, right? That's the way I am about this program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I love to study this book. I love to research this book. I love to carry the message of this book to other alcoholics. Because I promise you, I don't want nobody in the world to ever suffer from alcoholism for 42 years like I did in my life. Nobody. And the goal is today, I love to help as many people as I can. And I do have to thank God for giving me this opportunity that he gives me today. I can be there for other people. First of all, I ain't worried about me. God got me anyway. My concern is simply for other people, especially if you're suffering from this illness that we suffer from. It's sad. Sometimes I be in tears when somebody won't accept the message that I bring from this book, because it hurts. Care for people. That's still one of my defects. I ain't asked God to remove that one, because I asked him to remove what was blocking me off from him. I can deal with this kind of a defect, but the defects that were blocking me, they had to be took away. But he took them away and gave them, he replaced them with something better. No doubt about it. I still ask him today to remove stuff. If there's a problem going on within my inner being, I ask God, please remove this thing. Please remove this defect. And once he remove it, he's going to give me something greater. Like, what is it, about a year ago, we started, I took this meeting over from my brother Joe, member of the Keystone Group. Now, I prayed to God. And y'all knows I do like to talk about God a lot. He's the one saved my life, and this book got God in all through it. So for the atheists and the agnostic, I don't have a problem with y'all. Never have, I never will. But this is my conception. Power greater than me is simply God. And I can't help it. But then here, at the bottom of the spiritual experience, it reads, and I love to read this, especially when I'm sharing it and doing a talk in another meeting or something. What often takes place in a few months could seldom have been accomplished by years of self-discipline. With few exceptions, our members find that they have tapped an unsuspected inner resource, which they presently identify with their own conception of a power greater than themselves. Most of us think this awareness of a power greater than ourselves is the essence of spiritual experience. Our more religious members call it God consciousness. There's that God conscious word again. Back in step 3 prayer, we said we ask God to relieve us of the bondage of self, right? That it may better do his will, not my own will. So when we gain a connection, which this process is going to tell us how to gain a connection with this power greater than ourselves, once we tap into that power, life changes. Everything changes. It's for the better. We got a whole new attitude about life and situations. This program is God sent. I just have to tell the truth. So then again, back on page 5, 6 to 8, it say, most emphatically, we wish to say that any alcoholic capable of facing his problems in the light of our experience can recover, provided he does not close his mind to all spiritual concepts. You notice there's the word again. Any alcoholic honestly facing his problems in the light of our experience. Talking about the experience of these first 100 men and women that helped write this book, right? And it said they can recover, provided he does not close his mind to all spiritual concepts. You notice it didn't say, well, they can just be recovering their whole life. No, it said they can recover. That's the purpose of the 12 steps, the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, to bring about recovery from alcoholism. Yeah, we're going to have problems when we recover. We're going to have problems the rest of our life. It's part of the human condition. We are alive, we are breathing, we are still human. Situations going to pop up, yeah. But I don't mean a drink going to fix it. If we don't recover from it, we're not no longer suffering from it. We got to deal with our human condition because we have lives to live, right? But then, page 568, it reads, he can only be defeated by an attitude of intolerance or belligerent denial. An attitude of intolerance. So I had that attitude for a long, long time, Pete. But that denial, I had that one even worse. Man, you better not call me no darn alcoholic. I can control my drinking and then I fall down drunk. So how is that controlling my alcohol? That was denying the fact that I could not handle it. I really couldn't. But then, back to page 568. We find that no one need have difficulty with the spirituality of the program. These are some important spiritual principles right here. Dealing with the program. That's the name of the topic today. Spirituality and the program. So it says willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness are the essentials of recovery. But these are indispensable. No doubt about it. We got to get honest with ourselves. In step one, right? We gotta admit that we powerless over this thing. There's nothing we can do about it. We real alcoholics are beyond human aid. And then one more thing on page 568, then we'll move on. Every principle, which is a bar against all information, which is proof against all arguments, and which cannot fail to keep a man in everlasting ignorance. That principle is contempt prior to investigation. Yes, if we don't investigate to see what's wrong with us, that's contempt. We'll forever be sick. It took the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous to solve my problem. I done tried everything in the world to solve my problem. You better believe it. I mean, simply everything. Everything I tried. And then I'm going to revert back to page 20. Page 30. That's where I want to go. Page 30. And Brother Dan, if you read, I want you to read this right here. From the top of the page. And then you can go, matter of fact, you can go all the way down to the end of the second paragraph where it says, get worse, never better. And we have a little short discussion.
Cool.
Yeah.
Kicking off with chapter 3, more about alcoholism, page 30. Most of us have been willing to admit we were real alcoholics. No person likes to think he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows. Therefore, it is not surprising that our drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove we could drink like other people. The idea that somehow, someday, he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. The persistence of this illusion is astonishing. Many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death. We learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. The delusion that we are like other people, or presently may be, has to be smashed. We alcoholics are men and women who have lost the ability to control our drinking. We know that no real alcoholic ever recovers control. All of us felt at times that we were regaining control, but such intervals, usually brief, were inevitably followed by still less control, which led in time to pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. We are convinced to a man that alcoholics of our type are in the grip of a progressive illness. Over any considerable period, we get worse, never better.
Okay, thank you, Brother Dan. Okay, that last sentence you just read, the last two sentences. We are convinced to a man that alcoholics of our type are in the grip of a progressive illness. Alcoholism, once you reach that point, it never reverses. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. This is a true fact. That we're gonna go over some examples probably next week on somebody that was sober for many years, and then when he retired, he ended up picking that drink up, the allergy activated, and he was dead within 4 years. It says over any considerable period, we get worse, never better. So if we don't reach this point of where we are real alcoholics, you notice alcoholics of our type. You know, Bill classified these alcoholics as some can be moderate drinkers, and we got the heavy drinker, and then we got what we call the real alcoholic. Bill uses the words real alcoholic or true alcoholic, or whatever it is. People in our class, we are doomed without a power greater than ourselves. And then back to the top of the page, right? It says most of us have been unwilling to admit we were real alcoholics. No person likes to think he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows. No. I always thought they was different. I never thought I was different. I couldn't admit it. Well, shoot. I'm sitting there drinking with my friends, and here they run home, go to bed. So I'm still sitting here. I'd be sitting there drinking with, where they at? They go home, went to bed. So I said, they different than I am, but they got a problem. Shoot, I'm the one sitting with the problem because I couldn't quit drinking, right? So the first step in recovery, it talks about we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were real alcoholics. So we learned the symptoms of alcoholism in the first portion of this book. That's where we classify ourselves. We don't classify nobody else as an alcoholic, but there are qualifications that make us alcoholic. Everybody that drink not an alcoholic. I explain that to people today too. I said, you might be a heavy drinker, but you're not alcoholic. Because let's see, you take 5 or 6 drinks, you go home and go to sleep. In my experience, I never could do that. Right? To be drinking all the time, all night, 3-4 days at a time. So here's the kicker. He talks about this first great obsession, because Bill says the idea that somehow, someday he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. I'm gonna go to page 23 right fast, then I'm gonna come right back there. So on page 23, if you scroll down to the second where it says once in a while, just right close to the middle of the page. I want to share this little bit. It says, once in a while, he may tell the truth. And the truth, strange to say, is usually he has no more idea why he took their first drink than you have. Some drinkers have excuses with which they are satisfied part of the time. But in their hearts, they really don't know why they do it. Once this matter has a real hold, they are a baffled lot. There is the obsession that somehow, someday they will beat the game, but they often suspect they are down for the count. We try to beat the game by when we become real alcoholics, we try to beat the game by trying to stop drinking on our own. I experienced this many years. I always try to stop myself from drinking. Oh, I could stop till I got to the next drink. It's about the only time. I didn't care about no important appointment or going court dates or whatever I had to go through back in the day. That drink was coming first. So then, back on page 30, it talks about the delusion, this is in the middle paragraph, it says the delusion that we are like other people, or presently may be, has to be smashed. We all know what a delusion is, right? We can't see it. So that idea has to be smashed. When you may ask yourself, well, how do I smash it? We have to smash the delusion. We have to realize, hey, I'm not like these normal people. I'm in a different class. The doctor described it that we are a distinct entity. We are different from other drinkers because we have that energy in our body which produces that phenomenon of craving. A normal drinker or a heavy drinker doesn't have that symptom. Now it talks about the malady. But then what I wanted to say was the baffling feature of alcoholism. It's the utter inability to leave it alone. No matter how great the necessity or the wish may be, it's baffling. That problem comes from the mind. That's where we struggle from. And then once that mind gets us to take that drink, then it's too late. We off to the races. And this program takes us through a process to solve that problem. So then it says, we alcoholics on page 30. We alcoholics are men and women who have lost the ability to control our drinking. We simply out of control. If we trying to control our drinking, we already in bad shape. And if we trying to control it, we can't enjoy it, right? And if we enjoying it, then we can't control it. So actually, at this point, we are screwed. And we know that no real alcoholic ever recovers control. Here's a great point, then I'll be ready to shut it down. It says, all of us felt at times we were regaining control, but such intervals, usually brief, right? Hey, I used to stay sober 2 or 3 days. I think I got control now. I'm gonna try to take me a drink. Shoot, the evidence showed different. Shoot, I was out of control as soon as I took that first drink because I couldn't stop. And then it said, these intervals that were usually brief were inevitably followed by still less control, which led in time to pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. Yes, I was in a pitiful state of mind, a pitiful state of my body. Wow. See, this book is the truth. It tells us the truth. And the first portion of this book is going to tell us how to get sober, how to stay sober, and how to live. This course of action, it works for these real alcoholic of my type, and I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for all of you, so thank you, everyone, for being here, and happy Sunday. I plan on finishing the spirituality in the program on next Sunday. I didn't get far as I wanted to get because I get tied up and I just be wanting to just bring the main points out, right? Because it's important that we bring the main points out. Anyway, thanks everybody, and thank you, Brother Dan, and my brother Rob is in the building. Roll Tide.
Thanks for hosting again today. Brilliant. Thank you. I've posted information for the Recovered Alcoholics Facebook page and the YouTube channel where this and all the other audios are. I've also posted my email address if you'd like to have the current Keystone meeting list both online and offline. So thank you very much for being part of the meeting. Thank you for letting me be of service. And I'll wrap up this side of things with the step 3 prayer on page 63. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt.